To be successful in WWE, or in the wrestling business in general for that matter, a performer must have an ego. Well, to some extent anyway. Ego doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but sometimes they can get out of control when a talent buys into their own hype, thinks they're above someone or above doing something, or starts acting in the interest of self-preservation to maintain their top-tier status. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 WWE stars whose egos ran wild. Oh, no Hulk Hogan in here. It's just too easy. Join us. Number 10, Triple H. It's been over 2 decades since the peak of Triple H's infamous reign of terror, where the cerebral assassin seemed to be perpetually in possession of either the WWE or World Heavyweight title belts and sledgehammered his way past everyone who got in his way. Often, literally. There were constant accusations that Hunter, as the son-in-law of Vince McMahon, used his clout to ensure that he was always in the prime position, regardless of whether there was a hot new act catching fire or fans were, just sick to bloody death of seeing the game in the main event. And when you look at how strong he was booked and presented on WWE television, despite many believing it wasn't in the best interest of the company, including Pat Patterson, who temporarily quit WWE in late 2004, largely in protest at the seemingly never-ending push of Mr. Helmsley, it's hard not to see merit in those claims. Add in how he put an early kibosh on the love triangle with himself, Stephanie, and Kurt Angle because he didn't believe his badass character would get cheated on, WWE making sure he didn't display weakness in video game still images, and countless other stories of politicking paints quite the picture, doesn't it? Number 9, Buff Bagwell. The blink and you'll miss it WWE career, seems generous, of Buff Bagwell was a textbook case in how to lose friends, alienate people, and annoy the powers that be so badly that your chances of ever being rehired explode like a dodgy calf implant. Which, we must never forget, actually happened to Bagwell in 1995. One of WCW's biggest stars during the promotion's dying days, Buff came over to WWE for the ill-fated invasion, very much believing that he was still the stuff. That, in his mind, meant that he shouldn't have to report to company-mandated training sessions for the WCW crew to help them get used to WWE rings and shake off any ring rust. Bagwell started a fight with Shane Helms at one of the practices, then continued to endear himself to his new employers by turning up late for house shows, refusing to take any sort of blame for that disastrous Raw main event with Booker T, and, the kicker of the whole thing, having his mother and former WCW Tag Team Champion Judy call in sick on his behalf. Future endeavored after a whopping 8 days on the payroll, Bagwell to this day contends that the man in the mirror was not to blame for his own demise. Number 8, Sunny. There were women wrestlers, managers, and valets before her, but Tammy Sunny Sitch was WWE's first female in the diva mold. Not bad for someone who was studying to be a plastic surgeon when she decided to follow her boyfriend Chris Candido into the business. Sunny managed Candido in WWE as well as other acts like the Smoking Guns, Farouk, and the Legion of Doom, but she was a star in her own right and often stole the attention away from the wrestlers she was seconding. AOL's most downloaded celebrity of 1996 was popular alright, and didn't she know it? According to just about everyone who was around her at the time, Sitch's opinion of herself got loftier and loftier with each passing week, and she became something of a nightmare to deal with backstage. This would have never happened if they didn't give her that best bun slammy, I swear. Her spiraling ego problem wasn't helped by substance abuse issues and a fierce jealousy of Sable, the new shiny toy who would herself develop quite the ego as time went on. More of a prima donna than a body donna, Sunny's WWE exit was widely celebrated by colleagues who at one point decided to poop in her food as a means of humbling her. Number 7, CM Punk. There is a school of thought that if a professional wrestler is to truly break into that elite upper tier, they need to fully believe that they are the character they portray. So, when CM Punk confidently bellowed about being the best in the world, it's very likely that he properly meant it. Rob Van Dam certainly got that impression from the straight-edge superstar anyway, and also recalled how Punk would call locker room meetings during their time working together on the rebooted ECW, despite the fact that Phil Brooks had only been on the main roster for a cup of Pepsi at that point. Punk Punk has long been a man of principles and conviction, and has rarely, if ever, been willing to compromise his values for the business. Some see this as a virtue, while others see it as the so-called second city saint unjustly believing his own hype and taking himself too seriously. While Punk did put over his fair share of wrestlers in WWE, his list of enemies seems an awfully lot longer than his list of friends, and most of that is down to an abrasive personality and an allegedly inflated opinion of himself. And if you don't like that, come fight me, Phil. I'm also winless in the UFC. Number 6, Bret Hart. Perhaps CM Punk was taking cues from one of his idols. Bret Hart didn't just boast about being the best in the world, though. Oh no, according to the Hitman, he was the best there is, best there was, and the best there ever will be. And you know something? Many would agree with him. A perfectionist who was intensely protective of his character, Bret rubbed some people the wrong way with how he, in their opinion, seemed to put his own interests above the interests of others. Hart took great pride in portraying a hero, especially in his native Canada, which led to, shall we say, a sticky situation at the 1997 Survivor Series. Bret's critics point to his refusal to drop the title to Shawn Michaels in Montreal as the perfect example of his selfishness and putting himself in front of the business. There's more than one side to that story, of course, but it's hard to deny that the excellence of execution is the president of his own fan club and knew just how special a talent he was. Number 5, Chyna. Don't treat me like a woman, don't treat me like a man. Just treat me like I'm stone cold flippin' Steve Austin, complete with comparative main event positioning and pay. Those were the demands of Chyna not long before her acrimonious WWE exit in 2001. The ninth wonder of the world had gone from D-Generation X's silent bodyguard to a massive individual star, winning the Intercontinental title and gracing the cover of Playboy magazine during a whirlwind year. There's no doubting that Joanie Law's alter ego was a draw with a large fan base, but she was not quite at the level of the biggest star in the industry, even if she herself believed that to be the case. According to then talent relations head Jim Ross, Chyna demanded a 7-figure downside guarantee to re-sign with the company, while also expressing her disinterest in wrestling the other women on the roster and a preference for being in storylines with headline male talent. The uncomfortable working environment stemming from Triple H leaving her for Stephanie McMahon obviously didn't help matters, but good old JR believed that Chyna was asking much more than she was worth and ended negotiations. Number 4, Sable. I alluded to it earlier when talking about Sunny, but sod it, let's take a look at the woman who basically took her place, shall we? Rena Mero was famously hired after dropping the jaws of everyone with Sway when she accompanied her husband Mark to his contract negotiation meeting. First acting as the valet of the Wild Man, Sable soon caught fire, went solo, and became one of the hottest acts in the promotion during the burgeoning Attitude Era. A merchandise machine and rating sensation, Sable was made women's champion, scored the cover of Playboy magazine, and was one of the focal points of WWE TV for a time. And it all went to her head in spectacular fashion, leading to instances where Sable refused to drop the women's title, refused to take bumps in the few matches she would wrestle, and ended up dictating the way she did drop the title on her way out the company. Suing WWE for $110 million as she walked through the door, Rena Mero thought she had become the next Pamela Anderson in Hollywood, but soon realized that most of her mystique was created and preserved by the WWE machine. Number 3, Shane McMahon. If you are the son of the owner of $1 billion wrestling empire, you might easily assume it's your birthright to be able to do what you want, when you want to do it, backstage. Shane McMahon put that theory to the test at the 2022 Royal Rumble, when he showed up and used his influence to make himself look stronger than full-time talents by changing booking plans. His unprofessional and self-serving conduct infuriated the others involved with performing in and putting together the Rumble match, including eventual match winner Brock Lesnar. He's top of my list of people I would try to avoid annoying, for what it's worth. Shano's antics got him exiled from WWE for over a year, but it wasn't the first time he's shown that though his ego isn't quite as big as his father's, it's still suitably McMahon-sized. Just look at the way the man who was once crowned the best wrestler in the world has been scripted to look competitive with Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist, Kane, terrifying horror movie villain, Randy Orton, menacing psychopath, and a host of others, not to mention his penchant for performing spotlight-hogging stunts on major shows. Number 2, Shawn Michaels. I mean, how can a guy who thinks he's cute and knows he's sexy not have a very high opinion of himself? Shawn Michaels is undisputedly one of the absolute greatest in-ring performers of all time, a Hall of Famer who, even on his worst day, could drag the most limited sports entertainer to their best match ever, but he was also a self-admitted prick of the highest order, insisting he win titles he was never scheduled to, telling the man who had just dropped the world title to him to get the flip out of the ring after a 1-hour Iron Man match, deliberately overselling as a protest to losing a pay-per-view main event. Seriously, do we even have a time limit on this video? I could happily sit here all day and fire off every instance of the Heartbreak Kid making it all about the Heartbreak Kid. He may have mellowed a bit after his first retirement and finding Jesus and all that good stuff, but in his first run, Michaels was every bit the tyrant you've heard about, and then some. Number 1, The Ultimate Warrior. A bodybuilder who saw the professional wrestling industry as a way to make good money and nothing else, the Ultimate Warrior was only ever in the business for himself. Possessing an incredible look and a keen understanding of crafting and marketing his persona, Jim Hellwig's creation caught on during WWE's cartoon era, and he became at one point the biggest star in the promotion not named Hulk Hogan. Hellwig, meanwhile, believed he was at the level of the Hulkster and was so sure of it that he demanded, among other things, that he got paid Hogan money for all shows in a letter that he sent to Vince McMahon in '91. That was not long before Vince McMahon fired him, the first of 3 times he would have to let Warrior go within a 5-year period. Outside of monetary demands, Hellwig was also, according to many who worked with him, condescending, short-tempered, and flat-out rude, not just to the people who worked in the company, but ordinary civilians too. Warrior was an attraction and made WWE a lot of money, no doubt, but he was never bigger than the company or the business that made him a star, even if he felt that he was better than the guys working lower than him on the card. The list of people who speak glowingly of Jim Hellwig as a person is sadly shorter than the majority of his matches.